Hello, welcome to part 5 of the Create a Space Shooter in Godot live stream series. Okay, just so we don't make a mistake that happened on part 3 or whatever it was, where we didn't have any audio. Looks like we've got audio happening there according to the mixer. Let's make sure that we are streaming, and looks like we are live, so that is good. All is well with the world. Okay, so let's get back to it. So we've opened up our game and let's press play just to remind ourselves where we were. So we've got the thing coming down. I think, yeah, that's right. So we had this bit of an issue with the game over menu. Okay, so let's get back into that. So we go to our scenes and game over scene now. So it looks like that's in the center there. I think what the issue is if we go full rectangle, I think if we change that to 0, so if we change the anchors to 0, so if we just reset those, and now if we run it, it should maybe possibly work. So let's get ourselves killed. Okay, that's what we needed to do. So what we needed to do in order to get this centered was just to go to the main node and just change the anchors all to 0. Okay. Okay, so and then when we hit play, it plays it again. So what we don't have though is we don't have anything where we don't have like a nice introduction screen, because to make it look a little bit swisher, when it's game over, we want the option to either play again or return to the menu, and at menu we might want to, I don't know, have settings, or we might want to just exit the game or something like that. So let's work on a title screen now. So let's create a new scene, and let's have it as a control node. Let's call it title screen. Title screen. Now this is part 5, I believe, so we're going to be doing something a little bit more advanced in this than we've previously done. We're going to try and get ourselves really lazy and do a little bit of automation. Okay, so let's save this in the scenes. Okay, so I created a few assets earlier, and what are we going to do? So let's add a texture rectangle, and so this is what's going to be the background of our screen. So let's add the texture to it. So we're going to load it in, and I put it in the sprites directory, and I made a little gradient background. Okay, and then let's add on the root, let's add a center node to keep things centered. A center container, sorry, not a center node. And on that one, and let's have a vertical box container. So VBox container is up there. Okay, and let's have attached to that one, let's have another texture rectangle. Oops. And in this texture rectangle, we're going to have the sort of the title of our game. So let's add I should probably, we actually probably don't need that really, do we? So we'll delete that, and let's just attach the sprites. So let's add a sprite, and on this sprite, we are going to have, let's have the word defender. Okay. And let's get that, let's have that center rectangle a full rectangle. And let's get this somewhat centered. Okay. See, maybe we will add that texture rectangle and see if that helps. And let's just put that in there. And that did absolutely no difference, but maybe no. Okay, so that doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but let's go ahead and add another sprite. Oops. And let's have this sprite being the tube's dull, and one lucky last sprite. Tube's dull. Actually, we're going to have, as a child of this sprite, we are going to have another sprite. And don't worry, this will all somewhat make sense a little bit later. Let's have tubes bright, or whatever it was, tubes on maybe. Tubes on, okay. So, we're getting there. Okay. Rightio, actually. What we could do is load into our texture rectangle. This might be the smarter way to go about it. Yeah, this is what we'll do. So we'll delete this sprite here. Okay, so, and with that texture rectangle, VBox container, let's just make sure everything's centered. Okay. So with this one, let's just move it by hand. So let's just place that over there. So what my intention for this is when I hide this one, you can sort of see that it's got the faint outline. So if I click repeatedly, having it off and on, it sort of looks like a dodgy fluoro tube that's flickering. I don't know, I think it looks cool. So, and then we're going to want some buttons. So let's have the next thing on the VBox can be a margin container. And in the margin container we could have another VBox. And in this VBox, let's have a couple of buttons. So let's add a button. Okay, and let's call this button. Let's call this button play. And let's add another button. And let's call this button button settings, maybe. But on settings. Then let's have another button, and we'll call this one button credits. And let's have lucky last button and call this button exit. Or button quit or something like that. I'm going to call it exit. Okay, so we've got our 4 buttons there. Now, as we saw with the last one, we could go and, you know, type, I don't know, exit in here. And so then it's there. But what we're going to do is we're going to delete that. We're not going to do that for the time being, because what we're going to do, I'm sorry, I'm just going to move this. There we go. Because what we're actually going to do is we're going to actually find out we're going to use a slightly more difficult on the outside look. It may appear more difficult on the outset, but like a really cute way that we can sort of do this. So let's just, in the meantime, let's just see how this looks. Okay, so that's how it's going to look. Now, I mean, it's one of those things where, let's just see, let's just have a look here. So let's go local margin container for the VBox, and let's just change the right to, I don't know, let's just say 64, and the left to 64. And so say we're sort of bringing the buttons, and that's probably, let's go 128 and 128. Okay, that's probably a better size. And let's just add a little bit of margin to the top. I don't know, 16. Okay. Rightio. And did we want to do anything with this VBox container there? What about that texture rectangle? Do we want to change the margins there? Left, let's see, one about 12. Yeah, so that should actually, that sort of looks okay. So let's preview the scene. Okay. So that's alright actually, but let's just move the texture rectangle. Oops. Okay. So let's go left. Let's say 128. Oops, no, we don't want to do that. Okay. Okay, so that's probably not too bad there. We could add, if we added that to the center container. So yeah, okay, so what I did there was I just actually I'm just going to control V out of this. It's control Z, sorry. So I've got a center container there, but it's not actually attached to anything, so I'm going to drag all of this stuff into the center container, and that sort of centers it. So let's see if that looks like it should. And it's sort of, yeah, there we go. So it's centered using the center container. We've got that all sort of centered up quite nicely. Okay, so let's close that and let's get to some coding. Now, I'm envisioning this coding to be a little bit more complicated than we've previously encountered. So be prepared for plenty of errors on my part. Okay, because we're going to wing this. Okay, so what do we want to do? First of all, we are going to want to sort of connect some buttons up. Okay, so we've got all these buttons, but we don't actually have any names to them. So let's create a function. Because we've got 4 buttons. So previously on the what was it, game over, we had 2 buttons, and we could it was easy just to sort of do connect and stuff like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to be sort of doing some iteration. So iteration is where we just loop over something, okay? And it's going to make life a lot easier for us. So what we're going to do is let's create a a function called connect buttons. Connect buttons. And so what that's going to do is that's going to loop over these buttons here. So play, settings, credit, exit. And it's going to connect them all up. So what we'll do is we'll go for node. So this is saying that for every node, which is button, 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 in this VBox container in get node, that's going to be VBox container. Okay, let's do this a different way, just in case we want to. Actually, we are going to do this a completely different way. So what we've got is just in case we're going to be, adding this to a center container, we don't want it to sort of mess up we don't want to sort of hard code the path to that VBox container node. We don't want to we've lost our script. We don't want to hard code that in case we need to change it. So let's do our onReady var. So let's call it button container equals, and let's just change this to button container. And sorry, every time I push enter it goes back to the display thing. So button container, is that it? Okay, so another way you could do that, so that's the path to that button container. The other thing you can do is right click and go copy node path. So if I copy node path and I delete that, so I'll do that, I'll just start that again. So right click, copy node path, and then I go control V, it copies that node path. And that's probably a better way than trying to use autofill on such a small screen. So getting back to things, so for every node in this button container, so in button container, now we want to get the children. Get children. So get children. So what that's saying is for every node in the button container, children, so that will return an array, and this for loop is going to iterate through the array of children there. So for every node, and node is going to be, as it loops through, button play, button whatever that next one is, button settings, yada yada yada. Let's get it to do something. So we are going to node, because that's the variable, which is referencing whatever button node that is. So we're going to connect pressed with self, and it's going to be on button pressed. Now what we're going to do is with this, we're actually going to be passing a variable with this we're actually going to pass a variable to this on button pressed function. So, and that means that we can, and in this case, the variable we're going to pass is going to be the name of the button. Okay, so node dot name. Okay. Now, so that's not going to do anything until we add, so we go to the ready, oops, I'll just get this, there we go. So go to the ready function or method, and we are going to connect the buttons. So what's going to happen, as soon as the scene's run, hit the ready, connect buttons, it's going to jump down to this, and then it's going to go for button play. Well, so it's going to loop through these 4 buttons, and it's going to go button play, connect pressed, on button play, on button pressed, and then pass the node name, which needs to be in an array. Otherwise, it probably won't work. Okay, and that's going to do that for all the buttons there. So we need to create this function on button pressed now. So function on button pressed. Now remember, what's going to happen is it's going to take a variable. Okay, so what we need to do is, let's call a variable button, semicolon, and what we're going to do is we are going to use a match statement. A match statement. Okay. But we need to match button. So what this is saying is that, I'll just do the first one first. So button play. So what this is essentially saying, oops, is that try and match the value of button to any of these, and if it's true, then process this statement. Okay, so let's just say in this one we are going to, when we click play, we want to instance the game scene. So var new game, oops, actually no, what is that called? It is called level 1 or something, wasn't it? What, level 0? Yes, level 0. So well, let's just go new game instance equals load, and it's level 1, isn't it? Level 1, there we go. Dot instance. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to get the parent, and then we want to add child, new game instance. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to, so this will, because this is going to be attached to the main, well eventually it'll be, actually we'll do it in a minute. So that's going to be attached to the main scene. So it's going to go to the parent, which is the main scene, and it's going to add a child, which of the level 00 scene. Okay, but we need to delete the menu, or the title screen, I should say. So we go Q free. Okay, so at the moment everything's looking pretty good. But one thing we haven't done is I haven't got around to showing you this really quick and nice hack for labeling the buttons. So let's call this function set button text. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something pretty similar, okay, to what we did earlier. We're going to do a for loop. So for node in button container dot get children. Okay, so same thing again. This is just saying we're going to sort of loop through these children of the button container. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that the node, let's just say, let's create a variable. It might be easier. So variable button, let's say button name, maybe button name equals the node and its name. So in this case, node name on the first iteration is going to be button play. On the second time, it's going to be button settings. Third time, it's going to be button credit, and fourth time, it's going to be button whatever that was, quit or something, exit, I should say. Okay. Now, what we want to do is with button name, what we're going to want to do is we're going to say that equals button name, and we're going to use a function called replace, and we're going to replace the word button underscore with nothing. Okay, so what this is doing here is this is saying, okay, that we're going to assign the value button name to be the button name, which is the node name, and we are going to replace the word button underscore with nothing. Okay. In fact, what we'll do is we'll streamline this in just a moment, and then what we'll do is we'll say node text. So this is saying, so node text, so that's going to be the button, the text of the button is going to equal the button name. Now, I know that looks like complete and absolute nonsense, but let's see how it works. So set button text. So let's run this and see if it works. So we're just running the scene. And as you can see, what's happened here, I'm going to use this as an example. So if I'm going to put this over here. Okay, so what we've done is, let's get this happening here. So what we're saying is so in the set text, instead of like typing play, settings, credits, all that sort of stuff. What we're doing is we're saying, go to the button container node, which we specified as this one, get the children and iterate or loop through the children. While we're looping through the children, each time we're going to get the node's name and assign it to a button name. Then what we're going to do with that button name is we're going to replace the letters button underscore with nothing. So that's essentially getting rid of the first bit of each of these names and is just leaving, so button play becomes play, button settings becomes settings, button credit becomes button credits, and button exit becomes button exit. And then what we do is we assign the button text, so that's the text that's displayed on the button, to this truncated or edited button name. Okay, so I mean, you could by all means go into the editor, so I'm just going to close this down. So you could by all means go into the editor and type those in one by one, but what we've done is in essentially 4 lines of code we've changed all the names of the buttons. And what that means is, let's just say that we wanted to change button exit to button quit. Okay, then when we run the scene, it changes that to quit. Okay, so I happen to like it as exit, so we'll go back to exit. Oops. EXIT, and so then when we run it, it's changed back to exit. So I mean, that's kind of just a way. It requires a little bit more planning, a little bit more thinking, but it just makes life a lot simpler, I think. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to go to our main scene. So remember, on our main scene, so this is the scene that's run when we load the game. Let's delete the level 00. So I'm hitting delete, and let's instance this title. Where are we? Title screen. Okay, so now when we hit play, it looks like a complete mess. Okay, so let's see, it's probably this anchoring business again. Okay, let's go title screen. Where are we? Title screen. That. So let's run that. So okay, so that's looking a lot better. So we've just loaded up the game. Now remember, and what we're going to do is we're going to have our scene tree running. Now, sorry, I should have hit play. So let's hit play. So we're hitting play, not running the instance. So now we've got our scene tree, which has got main. So we're just going to keep that sort of running there. So we've got our game data that's loaded. We've got a title screen. Now, if I hit play, remember, if we go to scripts, how we had this connect button. We had this connect button thing. So the connect button was on button pressed, we are connecting it to this function here and passing the node name. And then we have using this function called match button, which is basically saying, okay, if the button's value is any of the following values, then do this. Okay, so if it's button play, it will load the first level. Because we haven't programmed anything else in, if we hit any of the other buttons, it shouldn't do anything. So if we hit settings, nothing happens. Credit, nothing happens. Exit, nothing happens. Now I'm going to hit play and watch what happens here to the scene tree. So hit play. and what's happened is it deleted the title menu and brought in level 1. Now, so if we go menu, nothing happens. But if we go play, it goes back to there. So what we want to do now is we want to go back to our menu. No, sorry, our game over. Where are we? Game over. Yep, game over. And what we want to do is we want to have it so that when we hit menu, it loads up the menu again. So let's go function on button menu pressed. So we're going to go variable title screen instance, I guess. Title screen instance equals load. What have I done there? On button menu pressed. Oh, it already exists. What's happened there? Okay, sorry. Okay, my mistake. So I'm going to delete this, and the reason why I'm deleting it is we'd already created that function there, and that's the one that's sort of saying switch to menu there. So we don't need to recreate it. So now we type var level, no, not level instance, title screen instance, title screen instance equals load, and it's going to be, we are going to load the title screen. Remember .instance, and then we want to get parent, and we want to get the parent again, and the reason for that is that this is being instanced as a scene of level 1, oh sorry, level 00, so we need to get out of that, and that brings us to the well, sorry, we're currently in the game over scene, so we need to get to the parent, which brings us to the level 00 scene, and we want to go up to the parent, which is going to be the main scene there. And so then what we want to do is we want to add child, and that's going to be title screen instance, and then we want to get parent, which is the, so remember getting parent is the level level 00, and we want to Q3. Now I know it's a bit confusing because we're using these double parents, but the easiest way to have a look at what's going on there is to do this. So let's just expand that. So we'll play. We'll get us crashing into something there. Okay, so if you have a look, the game over menu is there. Okay, so if we get the parent is now level 0, but we want to add the title screen instance to the main. So that means we need to get parent, which gets us to there, and then get parent again, which gets us to there. Then when we're Q3, we're currently in the game over, so we want to get to parent, which gets us to level 00, and we just want to delete that by using Q3. Okay, so now when we go to our game, we could push play and that plays, or if we click menu, it takes us back to this menu screen, and from there we can play it again if you want. Okay, so it's starting to get somewhere. Okay, so let's exit out of that and let's add some more things. Okay, so let's say button play. Now let's just say we have button settings. Okay, and let's just go print settings. And this is just so we can see what's actually happening. And let's go button credits, and then go print thanks to everyone. Okay, and then let's go button, what was the last one? Button exit. Now for button exit, what we're going to do is we are going to basically end the game. So in order to end the game nicely, you could just go a whole bunch of queue frees, but that's just really messy and stuff like that. So we get the tree, get tree, and we do a thing called quit. Okay, so let's see how this runs now. Okay, so if we have a look, remember the match button. So if the buttons play, the button settings, so let's push settings, and as you can see there, the word settings comes up. So every time I push settings, that's being fired there. Button credits, let's see what happens there. Thanks to everyone, and button exit exits the game. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we pretty much now have it's pretty much nearly done. All we need to do is, you know, really just jazz things up a little bit. So let's just make sure it's working as intended. So we hit play. So I can shoot some stuff. Let's just shoot some stuff. Let's shoot random stuff. Bang, 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 bang. Okay. So we're on score 10. Let's crash. Okay. Now remember, for testing, not only did we have these spaceships rocketing down at an unnatural speed, we also had it set to 0 lives. And that was for testing it, so I just don't have to kill myself 3 times in order to see if it's working. So, but what we're going to do is let's go back to the menu and let's play it again. And you can see that my high score is retained, so it's still 10, but my score is 0. And that's the same if I click play. So if we beat the high score of 10, which hopefully I can do, I usually suck really hard at my own games. Okay, so now I'm on score 12, so I've beaten that high score of 10. And as you can see, every time I score a point, it adds to that high score up there. Okay, so last thing we really need to do, last thing we're going to do is menu and exit out of that. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our player scene, and remember how we, oops, I'm deleting stuff, and that was me hitting the wrong button on the thing. So remember, let's go player. So lives, let's go to three. So we'll have 3 lives. And I think it was in the spawner, wasn't it? Enemy spawner that we had it going so fast. Spawner. No, we didn't have the speed there. Yep, that's right. So let's comment back that and delete this. So this will have the random speed. So that's in the spawner GD script file. We want to delete the enemy speed of 5 or whatever and just bring it back to that slower random range. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is one last final thing. And what that is remember when I went to the title screen And let's get it looking at there. And remember how I was sort of clicking on that to sort of make it look like it was a neon tube on the fritz. Well, let's code that in, okay? So let's code that in. And let's just code it in at the bottom. I'm not sure what the standard protocol is. So let's call this, let's actually add a timer. So we're going to add a timer. Now remember the timer from the spawner. So what it does is it measures a time and fires a signal once the time is reached. So we're going to go timer, and let's call this one timer flicker. Oops. Flicker. And then let's create another one. So go title screen. So we're attaching it as a proper child. And let's go timer again, and let's call this timer flicker time, flicker duration. Okay. So let's go back to our code. And the first thing we need to do is we need to connect this up. So connect, no. What we need to do is, let's do this properly. Let's do it the hard way. On ready, there, let's call it timer flicker equals timer flicker on ready variable timer flicker duration equals timer flicker duration. There we go. Okay, so what we need to do is let's connect up the timer flicker. Let's connect that to a timeout. So when it's timed out and self, so because the function is going to be in this script here, and let's just say on timer flicker timeout, on flicker on dancer on prancer on flicker, what was it, on flicker on timer flicker on timer flicker time out. And let's just do the same for the duration. On timer time. Okay, so now probably best practice when you're doing this is not to do it that way, but to do the connection, then create the function. Once you finish the function, then do the next one. So I probably should have done it that way. So actually what we're going to do is let's do it that way. So I'm just going to delete that. So again, we're doing it the hard way just for sort of good practice of things. So let's create this on timer flicker timeout. Now I could just highlight that and Control C and then paste it, which is probably what I'm going to do. Let's do it the hard way. On, what was it? On timer flicker timeout. On timer flicker time out. Okay, so this is when the timer flicker timeout gets triggered. We want the timer to basically reset. We want it to trigger a flickering effect. Okay, so let's call the flickering effect flicker. Okay, and we will get to that in just a moment. And what we also want to do is we want this, actually what we want to do is we want this timer flicker, we want to set a wait time, a variable wait time. Okay, let's just say, let's give it a random range between, I don't know, random range. So this is saying pick a random number between 1 and 6, or 1 to 5.9999, whatever. Okay, timer flicker, and we've got to start it off just in case it doesn't automatically start. Okay, so what we're basically saying is let's start that timer, set that timer for a random period from there, and let's just start it off there. Okay, and so then when it times out, when that timer reaches whatever time that is, then we go to, where are we? We go to the timer flicker timeout, and we're going to call another thing called flicker, another function called flicker. So let's flicker, and in flicker what we're going to want to do is we're going to want that sprite there, which we'll call glow. So we'll call it space glow. So when the, where are we? I've lost it. Okay, yeah, there we are. So when we get a timeout, we're going to want to flicker that node there. Okay, so let's go back to our onReady thing. onReady var, I know, space glow equals space glow. Okay, and so flicker is going to go space glow, and we're going to hide that node. Okay, and what we're going to do is we now, so what's going to happen is it's going to the timer flicker timeouts. It's going to call flicker, and the flicker is going to create the flickering. But what we also want to do before we call an end to this method here, we're going to want to reset the timer flicker wait time to another random number. So let's just go, while we're here, timer flicker dot wait time equals rand range, and let's say, I don't know, 5 to 15. Okay, so it's going to kick off this flickering. So what we need to do is, for the flickering, we're going to want to basically set the timer flicker duration, wait, oh, what's going on here, wait time, and let's say, so this time, because it's we want it to flicker really fast, we want a really small random range value. So let's say, I don't know, 0.05 to 0.25 maybe, 0.25. So this is of a second, so it's so it's 0.05 of a second to that. Now, what we'll do is, let's call that one a day. Now, what we want to do, so what essentially we're doing here is we're saying, so when we flicker, we hide the glow, but what we want to do is we want to have the glow come back after that duration there. So what we need to do is we need to go back up here, and when that duration is reached, so that's the timer flicker duration, dot connect. See, and this is why it's best to do it in this sort of logical way instead of just doing all the connections first, because it's, I don't know, for myself, I find that I just lose the plot of what I'm sort of doing if I don't do it in this sort of step-by-step manner. So on timer flicker duration time out. Okay, so oops. So what that's saying is, that's saying when the timer flicker duration is hit, let's go func on timer flicker duration, wasn't it? Flicker duration time out. So what we're saying is we're going to hide it, and after a certain amount of time we want to show it again. So we go space glow show. Then what we want to do is we need to stop this. And the reason for that is, if we don't stop the timer, every value from 0.0, so whatever that value turns out as, it's going to keep sort of triggering this function here. So let's timer flicker duration stop. Okay, so that's going to stop that. And that's all we need to do. So let's have a look and see how this works, if it works in fact. Okay, so it's switching it off, but it's not switching it back on, is it? So glow show. So what's happening there? So on timer flicker duration time out. Is that because we're not starting the timer perhaps? Timer start. Let's see. Okay. So something, for some reason, this one is not getting triggered. So on timer flicker duration time out. Wait time. Let's put the start there. Timer flicker duration dot start. Let's see if that works. On no. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so that's a lot better. So the issue we had is we weren't starting it. So what's happened now is we've got this random, well, it's pretty random, it's been a bit of a, so we've got this sort of random sort of flickering there. Now, one thing we can do to play a little bit more with this is let's go and have a look here. Okay. So now let's say, so let's try and get some sort of double pumps, I guess, on the flickering. So let's say that if rand range between 0 and 2 is equal to 1. Now, I'm not sure if we've covered this before, but if you want to say something is equal to something as in checking logic, you use a double equal sign. If you're saying you want something to equal something, so if you want the wait time to equal something, use a single equal. Okay, so that is quite important. That's a lot of languages, well, all languages I know of differentiate between that. So what we're saying is pick a number between 0 and 2, and if that number is 1, then what we're going to do is we are going to do a bit of funky maths here. Timer flicker dot wait time equals rand range timer flicker duration wait time 0.5 to timer flicker duration. Oops, what happened there? Timer. Oh, yeah, no, it worked. Tip flick duration dot wait time plus 0.1. Okay, so what this is going to do, oops. Okay, so let's just move that a bit there. Oh, that's as wide as that goes. So what that's saying is so pick a number between 0 and 2, if that, an integer I should say, between 0 and 2, and if that is equal to 1, what we're going to do is we're going to set the timer flicker wait time to a really short number. Okay? Because what that means is that then means that will then trigger that thing, which will then trigger the flicker again. Okay? And why we did this is we don't want to have the wait time, and it's never going to happen because of the way well, it could happen actually. We want the wait time to be greater by than the duration of the actual flicker. So we don't want it sort of being triggered halfway through the actual flickering itself. Okay, I've got no idea if that makes any sense, but it sort of makes somewhat sense to me. But what will happen is every now and then we should get a double flickering. Well, we haven't had one so far. There we go. So notice how we got sort of a bit of sort of double flickering going on there. Okay, so let's call it a day today. Okay, it's again, we've gotten a bit sort of heavier into the coding and stuff like that. Hopefully my explanations have made some sense. No idea if they have or if they haven't. But so we've pretty much got it down pat. We've nearly got a fully working game that we can use. We can shoot stuff. We've got high scores that get sort of recognized. We've got a life system there. Actually, the only other thing we need to do is to set a random seed, and that's one thing we haven't done so far. So let's just get ourselves killed here. Ooh, and that's the other thing. What happened there? Let's have a look here. Okay, so when we crash into the ships, it's not actually destroying the enemy ship. So let's fix that up there. So when the enemy ship on area, okay, so if the object is in the group player, object hit, and then Q free. And that should fix that error. Well, not error, but that bug. So if we go play, so I wasn't picked up before because these things were just dropping way fast. So let's see. Excellent. So now the ships blow up when they get hit. And so we've got basically quite a good working prototype here. We've got a score system, we've got a life system, a high score system, and we've got, that one's probably going to come first. No, that one's going to come first. And then we've got a game over sort of system here. We can go back to our menu. We can play it again. It still records our high score, resets the score down to 0. Okay, so let's call it a day today. You've done really, really well. And I guess pretty much this is really the main guts of it. I guess the only thing we haven't touched upon is adding some audio to it, and that's going to be triggering sounds when explosions occur, firing shots and stuff like that. And you know, I mean, I guess we could add a credit screen and stuff like that, but really you should have all the tools so far that you've learnt to be able to do that yourselves. Okay, well, thank you for watching.